Total War Shogun 2, a retrospective review. Total War Shogun 2, in my opinion, fully brought back Total War from its failure with Empire. While Empire Total War was by no means a financial failure, it was the laughingstock of the internet, with so many videos illustrating its glitches and ridiculously broken AI that fires on its own fortress walls with artillery to this day. While the following game, Napoleon Total War, felt like a slap in the face to fans at first, upon reflection, it is clear how its renewed focus on getting the atmosphere of Total War right led into the next game in the series, the extremely polished Total War Shogun 2, which, in my opinion, is the best Total War to date. The announcement of Total War Shogun 2 was a bit controversial, and many people were skeptical. Empire Total War's financial success, in my opinion, can also be attributed to its setting, the 18th century. Many people around the world could play as their own country, including Poland, Holland, France, Sweden, Russia, Britain, even America, and I believe that some nationalism played into the good sales numbers of Empire. Shogun 2 did not have such a crutch to lean on, since it was just focused on one country and era, the Sengoku Jidai period of medieval Japan. However, as noted in my previous video, CA had learned several lessons from Empire that were apparent in Napoleon. The game was much more polished graphically, and was better optimized. The game was faster paced and had more action in battles, especially due to its improved AI. The sound design was also much better, especially in regards to the soundtrack, which was much improved. Taking these hard-learned lessons to heart, CA focused on creating a fully fleshed out, polished product. I would argue that Shogun 2 Total War is the Total War with the most polish and, in reality, the most fun gameplay. The positives. First, I want to outline the several positive aspects of the game. It must be noted that the most important thing, the AI, is vastly improved in Shogun 2. Even playing on release day, the AI was a much more effective opponent than it ever had been in Empire and Napoleon. The AI in Shogun 2 on day 1 was aggressive and used its units effectively. It wasn't perfect at first. It took a few patches to get the AI to be more defensive when it was advantageous for it to do so. But even on day 1, it was obvious that it was not completely broken. The campaign AI was also much improved. It is much better at being defensive when it needs to be, for example when it is advantageous to keep its army garrisoned in a castle versus out in the field. And it does not suffer from the passivity issues in Empire and Napoleon. The AI in Shogun 2 is out to get you, and if it feels you are weak, it is not afraid to strike. It isn't perfect, but it is so much better. CA also absolutely nailed it when it comes to the atmosphere. The campaign map is, in my opinion, the best looking one CA has ever created, with Napoleon a close second. The battle maps are also extremely nice looking, with its rolling hills, sakura blossoms floating in the wind, excellently textured buildings, and the great looking medieval Japanese castles. Even the speeches and units yelling during battle are all done in Japanese, which I find to be very immersive. Even the design of the tech tree is well thought out and is so much better than the ones from Empire and Napoleon. The units also look relatively nice, though of course CA's job was easier in Shogun 2, since every faction is very similar to each other. The soundtrack also has to be mentioned. It is, in my opinion, the best soundtrack of any Total War. Jeff Van Dyke, the composer from Rome and Medieval 2, returned for Shogun 2 after not composing for Empire and Napoleon, and his soundtrack brings the energy back to the battles and a sense of calm contemplation for the campaign map. I also want to emphasize the excellent soundtrack for Fall of the Samurai, which, especially considering it's a DLC campaign, is phenomenal. When I talk about atmosphere, I am not only referring to the main Sengoku Jidai campaign, but also the Rise of the Samurai and Fall of the Samurai DLC campaigns. CA put so much effort into the art and sound design in each of the campaigns that they truly feel like 3 different games. The Rise of the Samurai DLC added the excellent Rise of the Samurai campaign, which covers the Genpei War of the 12th century and the rise of the Kamakura shogunate. This DLC was an excellent addition, as it stripped away some of the advancements of the regular Shogun 2 tech tree, since of course there were no cannons or European warships or muskets in this period, and really made the campaign feel different. The art design was also completely redone, including the design of the campaign map, the buildings, the units, the unit cards, the tech tree, character portraits. Everything was redone from the ground up to make it feel like you were being immersed in a different period. The final DLC expansion of Shogun 2 was Fall of the Samurai, which covered the Boshin War and the collapse of the Tokugawa shogunate. Fall of the Samurai is probably my favorite DLC of any Total War game, and it did something that a DLC campaign should do: make it feel like additional content rather than simply another version of the exact same game, which Rise of the Samurai also did. I didn't really mention the DLC for Empire and Napoleon in my retrospectives of those games. Why? Because those DLCs did not feel like they added substantial additional content to the game. They were different campaigns, but they were just focused versions of the exact same game. The Warpath DLC for Empire was simply forgettable, and not the route they should have gone for an Empire Total War DLC. The Peninsular campaign for Napoleon was a better effort, but it was still essentially the same game. Even going back to Rome Total War, the Barbarian Invasion and Alexander expansions were essentially the same game with different scenarios and improved AI that CA should have brought to the regular Rome Total War campaign anyway. Medieval 2's Kingdoms expansion was a better effort that more resembles the route they went with Shogun 2's DLCs. Shogun 2's DLCs are their own experiences, and this is another one of the greatest strengths of Shogun 2. It also proves that the DLC model can be viable for Total War when CA puts in the time and effort to make a substantial new experience for a DLC campaign. Additionally, though I'm not big on Total War's multiplayer, I did have a lot of fun with Shogun 2's multiplayer due to the effort they put into making interesting achievements and goals in the new campaign-like multiplayer mode. Basically, no part of Shogun 2 was an afterthought. The negatives. Perhaps the most notable way Shogun 2 suffers is in its focused nature. It is completely focused on Japan, and while each faction has its own unique units that are ever so slightly different from other factions, this leads to the issue of each faction feeling very similar to each other. While this did cause a lot of Total War fans to say, "I don't care about Japan," and not buy the game, it doesn't bother me too much in particular, since, especially in the main campaign and in Fall of the Samurai, you can make your faction into whatever you want. If you want to create a faction that uses warrior monks, you can. If you want to get the benefits of muskets, cannons, and European-style warships, you can. If you want to focus on using strong cavalry to flank your opponents in field battles, you can do that too. So for me, the samey feeling of the factions is not too strong a negative here, since you actually have a lot of choices you can make based on the situation or kind of campaign experience that you want to have. One of the major negatives in Empire Total War was the campaign AI's tendency to constantly request region swaps, or that the player seed regions for ridiculously low sums of money or similarly absurd things. In order to mitigate this issue, rather than improve the campaign AI in this regard, CA removed the ability to seed regions diplomatically. I find this to be a horrible move, perhaps the worst aspect of Shogun 2. It was a move that was historically made in this period, and the fact that it was removed for this game in particular makes it especially egregious, in my opinion. However, on the bright side, At least the AI doesn't constantly ask for Bavaria in exchange for $10 every turn. Conclusion. Total War Shogun 2, in my opinion, brought Total War back from the brink. The disaster that was Empire Total War's launch, and the controversial release of Napoleon as a standalone game, had made many hardcore Total War fans lose faith in CA's ability to create another good vanilla Total War experience that wouldn't be tarnished by the rising popularity of the DLC model of expansions. Shogun 2 proved that CA could still make an excellent game, and it also finally proved that they could make a competent AI, which I can't emphasize enough.